Hello and welcome back, it's Shrike here with another D&D video, and today we're going to be talking about what makes a great D&D live stream. So this is the first video in a series which I'm going to be calling D&D Discussions, where we take a subject in the D&D world and we are going to discuss it, and we're going to segment it down into different sections and then rate each section depending on how important I feel it is for whatever the topic is. So in this video we're going to be talking about what makes a great D&D live stream, and I'm going to segment it down to sections that I think make sense, and then I'm going to give you my score between 1 and 10 for each of those sections to show you what I think is important to make a great live stream. And then the idea is that you go down into the comments below and put your own scoring down there so I can see what is important to you, and other people who are watching the video can go down in the comments and see what other people find important when it comes to live streams. So if you want to see more videos like this, do make sure to subscribe. I upload videos every Monday and Thursday here on YouTube, so if you want to take part in more discussions like this, or you want to improve your game, go ahead and subscribe. So the first section that I want to talk about when it comes to making a great D&D live stream is the players. I think there's a few aspects of the players which really affect how the live stream comes across, and the first of which is the personality, which is probably the most obvious one as well. If the players have personalities that you don't really gel with, that maybe they annoy you a little bit, you're going to be less likely to enjoy that live stream. But if they're players that you really relate to, or maybe you even look up to them, then you're much more likely to actually enjoy watching them play D&D. I think another important aspect of the players is how invested they are. I have seen some live streams where a player or two definitely aren't focusing, and maybe they're reading Twitch chat or they're looking through Facebook, something like that. They're obviously not actually engaging with what is going on, and it really just isn't enjoyable to watch, because when it comes to their turn, they have to be like, oh, sorry, can you repeat that? And it's just not fun to watch. So I think how invested the player is in the game and how much attention that they give to that game is definitely a good aspect to think of. And another part of the players which is quite important to me but might not be important for other people is how well they know the rules. I do find myself turning off if the live stream becomes a bit of a teaching experience where the Dungeon Master is having to explain to the player how really basic things work in Dungeons and Dragons. I do think that if you're going to be on a live stream, you do have to do a little bit of research to at least get the basics behind you. Obviously you're not going to remember everything, and I don't expect them to remember everything, but if it's a case of the person is having to be explained how combat works, for example, on the live stream, it's just not very enjoyable to watch. For me that is. Of course it could be completely different for you. Maybe you enjoy watching other people learn the game. So taking that all into consideration, now I'm going to grade how important for me the players are when it comes to watching a live stream between 1 and 10. So 10 is it's an absolute must that they must be perfect for me to enjoy it, and a 1 being I don't care at all what the players are like and I will still enjoy it. So for me I would say it's a 6. The personality of the players and how they're engaging with the game really does affect my enjoyment of watching a live stream, so I'm going to give it a 6, just above the middle mark. And so the second section that I think we should talk about when it comes to live streams is the production. So for me there are some aspects which are a bit more important than other, and one that I find is probably the most important for me is the audio quality. I have seen some live streams that really don't have a very good audio quality, and it is really hard to follow along with it and get invested in it. And I think a part of that is because these live streams, sometimes they're 5 hours long, but even if they're not 5 hours long, they're 2, 3, 4 hours long. So listening to someone for that long who has bad audio quality really makes it hard for me to invest. But on the other hand, when it comes to video, I'm really not that bothered when it comes to video quality. There's a streamer called Arcadum who streams D&D games. He's the Dungeon Master, and most of his games, in fact I think all of his games, they don't actually use webcams. And that is just as enjoyable as one such as Critical Role, where they all have very good quality cameras. So for me, the video quality doesn't dictate my enjoyment for watching the live stream. And something else which doesn't really dictate my enjoyment is the graphics behind it. There's some out there that have really shiny graphics that rotate through the characters and update hit points and stuff like that. And although that is quite nice, I also really enjoy streams where it's just the webcam borders and that's about it. And then the final part of production that I think is important to keep in mind is something that both Critical Role and Arcadum do really well, and that's the maps, the miniatures, the parts like that you're going to look at. And when you look at Critical Role stuff, it is very impressive, and Arcadum's maps are very impressive on the scale. But then you go and look at something like Dice Camera Action, which is completely theatre of the mind and none of that at all. And that's just as enjoyable. So I don't think that's really that important for me either. So when I'm scoring this, really the only part that I care about is the audio. So I'm going to put it at a 4. And that's because the audio really is a killer for me. If you have bad audio, I'm not going to watch your live stream. But the rest of it can be really as good or as bad as it wants, and I'm still going to probably enjoy it. So going into the next section, which is all about the Dungeon Master, the DM. Every Dungeon Master has a different style, and you're going to get along with some that maybe I don't get along with, and vice versa. So I do think that it's important that whichever live stream you're watching, that the DM has a style which you're going to enjoy. For example, here's a bit of an unpopular opinion for you. I know that Acquisitions Incorporated C-Team is a very loved live stream, and I watched the first 4 episodes and I just could not get into how the Dungeon Master DMs. So I ended up giving up with that and going and spending my time watching other live streams, but I know that there are people up there that absolutely loves that Dungeon Master and thinks that he's great, so it's just going to be a matter of opinion. Something that I do believe is important across the board, doesn't matter your DM style or anything like that, is how much investment you're putting in the game. There are live streams out there which don't really put much preparation in, and they just turn up and they're running a module and they're just reading out of the module. That's not enjoyable to watch for me. Whereas on the other hand, there's people like Chris Perkins and Matt Mercer who put so much effort into their world and into their live stream that it really does resonate with me. And this sort of ties into DM skill. I believe if there was a live stream with a DM which isn't as experienced and isn't as good as some of these DMs which have been around for years, then it's probably not going to be as enjoyable for me to watch. For example, if there's a Dungeon Master that had to keep on referring back to the rules throughout the game, I probably wouldn't enjoy watching that compared to someone who knows most of the rules and only has to go back to the rules every now and again. So because of all those reasons, I'm going to give the importance of the DM a 7 in my score. C-Team sort of proved to me that the importance of the Dungeon Master does actually make a difference for me, because although loads of people love that, because I didn't resonate with the Dungeon Master, I ended up giving up with it. So I think it's safe to say that the Dungeon Master is pretty important for me. And now the final section that I'm going to talk about when it comes to a D&D live stream is the story and the world. I think this is important because if you're a person that doesn't really like sci-fi and it's a Dungeons & Dragons stream where they have injected a bit of sci-fi into it, you might not actually enjoy it as much. And then when it comes to the story, people like different kinds of stories. So if it's something that doesn't resonate with what you like to watch, then it just might not fit. For me, for example, I really like a story that has a lot of twists and turns, and if it gets a bit predictable and there's not been any for quite a few sessions, I do end up switching off a little bit. Whereas I have spoken to people where they prefer a much more predictable and linear story to follow because it's just a little bit easier on the brain and you don't have to focus as much. I think out of all the sections that we've come here, this one might be the most personal because everyone enjoys different stories and different worlds, so it's just going to be up to what you like to what live streams you're going to watch. I think because I'm a Dungeon Master myself and I like world building, the world is actually quite important for me as well, because if it's something that doesn't really have much depth and maybe it doesn't actually come up much in the actual gameplay, then I might not like it as much. But then if you look at something like Dice Camera Action, where they're playing in Forgotten Realms, which has a lot of very rich lore that I understand a lot of, I'm going to be much more invested, especially if the Dungeon Master is bringing those elements into the game a lot. So because of that, I'm going to give the story and the world a 6 out of 10 on my importance scale. I do think it's important, but I think as long as you're putting a fair amount of effort into building the story and the world, then I'm probably going to like it, to be honest. So there you have it. I broke it down into 4 sections to make it not too long and so that you can all play along at home. So now is your chance to go down into the comments, take each of the sections and put your score down in the comments below, and feel free to put your explanations below as well. As I said, I really do want to make more of these videos, so make sure to give this video a like if you did enjoy it, so that I know that people are actually enjoying this and that it's going to be worth my time going and making more of these. And if you do want to go and see more of these, then do subscribe. I upload here on YouTube every Monday and Thursday. But until next time, happy gaming.